I've never seen the dining room table so busy, Professor. How are you?
I'm in good shape. Yes.
I'm glad to hear that.
Frantically busy, but that's normal.
Yeah, I know. It's not usual for you to be in one place for too long, is it?
I've got too many creditors.
You keep moving. He makes for a difficult target. I was asking whether or not Israel, which is a very smart country, have they embraced all this climate change crap?
Not 100%. They are moving in that direction, but you'll see a lot of Middle Eastern countries taking huge steps toward that. I mean, the country that I used to live in, the UAE, for instance, they've got something called Mazda City, which is their experimental green belt. I don't know how successful it is, and I think that the easy thing for the Middle East to do at the moment is to still trade in fossil fuels because it's readily available and they can power themselves and whatever excess they power the rest of the world with.
Yeah. Up the Illawarra, basically a suburb of Wollongong, I guess it is, they have a postcode that they are determined to have every single house being run by renewables. 500 to begin with have adopted this renewables thing. Each and every one of those 500 houses has paid $50,000 for the privilege of getting the solar panels and getting the heat exchanger and getting the heat pump and getting the batteries and all the rest of it. And this strange sort of dream that one lithium-ion battery at a time we're going to save the world.
Apparently, but the Illawarra was built on coal.
Yeah.
It still does mine coking coal, which is used to make steel.
Yeah.
The Illawarra has never been a wealthy area. Some of the people living on the slopes and down near Berkeley are probably a little bit wealthier than others, but it has been a tough working class town with a lot of immigrants. These people can't afford to have ideological energy. The cheapest energy they can have is from coal.
Yeah.
And for governments to start to interfere in energy.
And subsidise.
And, well, that shows it's not working.
Yeah. And it's heavily subsidised to the tune, well, I don't know, it's about $20,000 or $30,000, but still these poor people are out of pocket just to be part of some sort of social experiment.
Well, exactly right. And it's all going to come to tears. It's not high-density energy, which you get from uranium, you get it from coal, you get it from oil, less so from gas.
Yeah.
But in terms of a bang for the buck, coal in Wollongong is by far the best source of energy.
And it's good coal. It's not brown coal. It's not...
No, it's good
coal.
Quality... Yeah. Bituminous coal, it is low in ash, it's low in sulphur, and the coking coal is prized by the world. And the coking coal has got a lot of gas in it, and they extract the gas from that because you can't have people mining underground in very gassy environments. So that's extracted by drilling in front of the mining, taking out the gas and using that to run a power station. And that power station runs the mines. So this is the mining there has gone on since the early 1800s, and it's wonderful quality coal. The only constraint on it is mining underneath some of the dams that supply Sydney with water, some of the smaller dams like Avon and Cordeaux and these dams. But apart from that, coal has been the mainstay of Wollongong. This is why there's a steelworks at Port Kembla. Yeah. Because the local coking coal came into the steelworks and the iron ore came in by ship.
Can you imagine anything as stupid as that? Here we are blessed with this wonderful resource that provides us with the cheapest energy in the world, and we're not allowed to use it.
Well, I think this is showing that we have got a bureaucracy and a government that have absolutely no contact with reality. And this has been 50 years in the making. You certainly wouldn't have had that in wartime, where you had the executive chairman of BHP, Essington Lewis. Yes. He actually ran the industry in Australia, ran the procurement for the military. We were in desperate times then. We needed energy. We needed to be able to make alloys. and he ran it. Now, we don't have those sort of people today. The executive chairman of big companies now are generally lawyers or accountants, and they're very woke, and they probably live abroad.
And they probably do I'm told they do, just at board meetings and functions, they do a welcome to country. I wonder what they're frightened of. What were you going to say, John?
Oh, I was going to ask Ian about the development of thorium reactors. While I have you here, a friend of mine and I were talking about, new nuclear developments to attempt to get a more stable nuclear industry around the world. What is the state of the development with thorium reactors? I mean, I hear that the Indians had started off down that track quite some time ago, the Chinese as well. Are we any closer to that sort of nuclear energy?
Yes, we are. Thorium is more abundant than uranium, and it's easier to handle because it has a very long half-life, so it's not emitting radioactive particles quickly as some other radioactive components are. And the third thing is that the spent fuel isn't rich in polonium and plutonium, which are highly radioactive and can be used for making bombs. China has now a thorium reactor. India has been trying to develop thorium reactors because up in Rajasthan there are quite a few thorium deposits. We have a lot of thorium in Australia, and it's not with our uranium deposits. Probably the most thorium we have are in our beach sands, and there are thorium minerals there which basically we discard. So it probably is the future. The problem is that when you develop a new technology, it tends to dominate, and that's what's happened. Uranium fission reactors have now dominated the world. We know how to make them. We know how to use them, yet it might not be the best reactor. And we've seen that time and time and time again with various development of technologies, and one technology is just taken over.
Well, in a country like Australia being sort of left-leaning to a great degree and very woke, dare I say, you'd think that someone who could actually on-sell the idea of thorium research and development in Australia would make quite the impact. But why are we not going in this general direction?
But no votes in it.
No votes in it?
No votes in it. Basically, Australia has changed from a rural country to a country with people living in cities and getting their information off a screen.
Yep.
They long for the outdoors, they long for spaces, and hence they become green, yet they have no understanding of what a farmer has to do. They have no understanding of what you have to do in a mine, absolutely no understanding whatsoever. They think, for example, that in a mine you just dig up rock and export it. Well, I was at the Roy Hill mine last week, and that's basically an automated mine. It's run by AI. The technology there is absolutely incredible. And the quality control is amazing. So now we have drilling that's done automatically, and that's run by drillers sitting in Perth, 1,800 kilometres away, driving 4 computers and 4 rigs at the same time. The samples are picked up automatically. The samples are taken to the assay laboratory automatically. They're automatically assayed. The ore is automatically sorted. The ore is automatically loaded onto driverless trains. The ore's carried around the mining lease by driverless trucks. So the world has changed, and if you don't keep up with those changes, you're going to miss out. Now, if you're producing oil or gas or iron ore or copper, it's not a local market. There's an international price, and if you can knock your costs down by 2 cents a petajoule or 2 cents a tonne, then when you're dealing with millions of tonnes, that makes a huge difference.
Yep.
So we are extremely competitive, yet there are some areas where we've totally closed off this technology. Gas in Victoria, a very good example. Thorium in this country, uranium in this country, very good examples. The rare earth element industry, with the help of the Malaysians and the Texans, have actually been able to separate out the 14 rare earth elements, which we couldn't do previously. That was all proprietary technology. So in many ways, we've got great green and fuzzy ideas, but to put it into practice, it's difficult politically. And the second thing is, this is not a good country for investment. There are much, much better countries in the world for investing. And today I'm off abroad. We were to go to Saudi. Through our eyes, Saudi's a much better place to invest in than Australia. That is an absolute turpitude to generate funds in Australia and then invest them outside the country.
Why is that? Is that because of the politics? Is it because that's a theocracy?
It's because of the politics. For example, you look at North West Shelf gas, you look at the Blaney gold mine, you look at the current federal and state administrations, especially in Victoria. You don't want to risk any money.
No, well,
these are long-term projects. If I have a geological idea today, by the time I get the tenements, do the exploration, do the evaluations and build a mine, it's 25 years.
All because of getting the approvals and all the regulations.
And there's a natural process of exploration and evaluation. Now, that's at least 8 terms of government. And you have to guarantee that those 8 terms of government are going to have constant policy. Then you might be operating for 25 years. That's another 8 terms.
How rich could we be here in Australia if you just
Rio Tinto
tell us what to do?
Did the calculations a while ago, and this was to have cradle-to-grave uranium. And that was where we would mine uranium ores, convert them into yellow cake, which are oxides or hydroxides of uranium, and then beneficiate those into uranium-235 enriched material, which we could sell as elements for power stations around the world. We could then charge to clean those up and take out some of the spent product and release out those fuel rods. And they worked out, and this was in the 1970s, the late 70s, that this would be worth for every man, woman and child in Australia about $8,000 per annum for hundreds of years. Now, that figure obviously would be much higher now.
Yeah.
And with our current government talking about this country being a renewable superpower, they really should be saying we should be a radioactive superpower where we mine the material, we make the fuel rods, we lease them out, we clean them up, we actually control the world's uranium. We could do that. We missed that chance. I think that chance is still there.
Yeah.
But we've got to have some determined policy. Now, this would solve all of the state government and federal government debt.
Yeah.
Rather than more tax, there would be more wealth generated. And governments have this wonderful ability to actually ignore their costs and take more money from the taxpayer. A business has to look at their costs. And when you're in trouble, you cut your costs. Governments don't do that.
What about Aboriginal land rights, though? I mean, we talk about Australia being
paintings. Come on.
Well, yeah, I mean, but if we were to sort of be serious about this, we've put so many restraints on our ability to explore the country. We can't tap anything without having to go through so many different bureaucratic hurdles, as you've said. But then on top of that, we've created this notion of land rights, which favours the local people, but it doesn't really favour the local people unless they want their land to be completely pristine and underdeveloped. So I don't know whether that's a development or whether it's keeping people back, including the Aboriginal people that land rights are meant to be promoting.
Very much so. We've got 60% of this country where you have to negotiate with Aboriginals before you can come onto it.
Yeah.
Now, I have a very strong objection about having to get permission to come into my own country. And the second thing is that if you go to Aboriginal settlements in the outback, there has been no change in 60 years.
Yes.
So where has the money gone? And we've got city-based Aboriginals who are running the show and getting all the benefits, and those in the outback are getting no benefits at all.
Yeah, which
is
just
a rort.
Yeah.
Why has that been allowed to perpetuate? Why can't they see that the Aboriginals are not getting the money that is given, $40-something billion, and there's an industry that soaks it all up?
We were once a Christian country. We had missionaries working with the Aboriginals, and we retain a little bit of Christian guilt. So we feel guilty about those who are of a different colour, who are less well off than us. And so to assuage that guilt, we make laws to give away huge amounts of money and, the problem's solved. We've given them a bucket full of money. No, that's not the way you solve
But they
problems.
talk about this gap, closing the gap, but this is going on. This is back on the table.
These are just words. They mean nothing. Absolutely meaningless words. Go into an Aboriginal town or an Aboriginal encampment in the outback and live there, and you will change your mind about closing the gap. The amount of drunkenness, the amount of drugs, the amount of rapes,
family violence,
it has not changed. And in many ways, that's part of the culture. And if we were sensible, we would try to do what we've done for the city-based Aboriginal and give them employment.
Yes. But isn't that a neo-colonial attitude you're holding, Ian,
Well,
really?
Warren Mundine wouldn't agree. I mean, he's a city-based Aboriginal. He runs a big business and he's comfortably off for his own efforts.
Yeah.
So if you have got no argument against me, then you accuse me of racism or you accuse me of being a neo-colonialist. I don't care about your labels. Give me the argument.
Yep.
And we have now evolved into a system that is meant to be democratic, but in this system we run by slogans like closing the gap. We don't have orderly discussion in public where the public can be informed and the politicians can perhaps have to justify their decisions.
Well, it's really fascinating because, we have this problem of, falling standards among the Indigenous communities of Australia. Ever so often we wait for a big headline to come out and everyone gets their knickers in a twist over it, and yet nothing ever gets done, except for the fact that they'll open up another bureaucratic department, fund a bunch of other bureaucrats to manage the unmanageable problem. And yet these people are so divorced from the reality of the ground, on the ground in these Aboriginal communities. They have no concept of anything other than, well, perhaps white city living in Australia that they can offer, which of course is never going to happen out in the outback.
Well, there's a simple solution to that. You move your bureaucracy, and so you move the Department of Trade to, say, Gladstone, which is a big trading port, Department of Finance to Port Hedland, Department of Infrastructure, you put them somewhere where there's no infrastructure, like Rabbit Flat in the Northern Territory, very exciting place to land. You put the Department of Climate Change, you put them down in, say, Port Davey down the bottom of Tasmania. That'll sort them out.
Where would you put the Aboriginal department?
Well, you'd probably put that in Wilcannia or Alice Springs or somewhere like that. Department
Tennant
of
Creek
Defence.
could be good.
Tennant Creek would be a good one, although Defence should be up in the Northern Territory.
Chinese are up there, though.
You'd put the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet. You'd have no home for them. You'd have them floating around. But if they had to have a home, you'd say put them at Coober Pedy. And this then would put people in contact with reality.
Yes.
Aboriginal affairs maybe should be at Halls Creek and have them work 2 shifts a day and have them walk home at midnight.
Could you imagine? Could you imagine the rebellion in Canberra if this became
then you
policy?
would lower the number of public servants.
Well, yes.
So it's a win-win situation.
It certainly
you
is.
get better quality decision making, and the exchequer wouldn't be bled paying people to carry around clipboards.
Yep.
So failing this grand plan, there is no hope, I take it.
Well, I've argued for a long while with climate change and with other matters that we need a crisis.
Yes,
be
I know.
That a
We're
depression,
talking about that.
be that a war, and then we may well wake up.
Yeah.
Now, I can see financial troubles coming for this country, whether it's a recession or depression, I don't know. And we may well be involved in a war. I don't know. But certainly the way our Prime Minister is behaving, the chances of the US supporting us in any conflagration are getting slimmer every day.
That is true. Yeah, I'd be curious to find out whether or not Trump rocks up to the NATO summit. I'm heading off on Sunday for the NATO Public Forum, where I'm going to appear as a panellist, which is really great. But the thing is that...
Do you know what they're going to throw at you?
Yes, upscaling deterrence, which is a really good issue to get my teeth stuck into. But nonetheless, it will be interesting to see the following day and who turns up, because the usual suspects will be there, all the European leaders will be there. But will the American?
NATO.
Well, yeah, well,
and
yes.
There's no place for an Australian leader there.
Well, I don't know. I mean, Albo, you raised the point that, the Americans, well, do they really count on Australia for anything anymore? And under Albo, I think that the Trump administration is not taking it seriously, the Australian government seriously now. So what will Albo do? Will he go to the Europeans and hope that the Europeans give him the relevance that he so desires? Or just hang like a shag on the rock out here and do nothing?
The US has some bases here which are very important. They're becoming increasingly dependent upon our rare earth elements, which we're now beneficiating in Texas. They have their own iron ore, their own manganese. They're energy rich compared with Australia. They actually extract every bit of gas and oil they can from their rocks. They have no uranium mines. So they don't really depend on us for food or for minerals. We're just sitting between the Indian and the Pacific Oceans, and we may well be of use someday.
Yeah. So we're like a strategic reserve.
We have a strategic reserve of oil in the US.
Yes, we do.
Ever get our hands on it's another matter.
It's funny about that.
Yep.
But I don't think our government has played this very well.
Yeah, I agree.
If I were Albo, I would immediately recall our ambassador. I would appear in front of Trump and get a thrashing, as did the president of the Ukraine.
Yep.
I reckon you'd.
Well, you should go and do it.
You should be our representative in the Oval Office.
Yes, I've been to Mar-a-Lago a couple of times.
As a paying guest?
No. Well, it's an interesting place, a very interesting place. And I went to the Trump inauguration by invitation on the 20th of January. So we have our contacts in this country that could really develop things much better. We have investments, big investments in the US by Australians. Probably the best example is Visi. The Pratt family has invested in the US, and it's an interesting place if you want to get into the oil or gas market, because you're paying top dollar to get in, and you've got a very unusual land title situation where the landholder owns the minerals beneath the land. So it's a very difficult stage of negotiation to get in there. But we could, with certain people, be a favoured nation. But you've got Penny Wong, who's saying things about Israel and the US. You've had the Prime Minister in the past say things about the US. This hasn't helped us.
No,
not at all. Let me ask you about Santos. I think they've been offered $36 billion to sell it to Abu Dhabi, the Abu Dhabi oil company.
That's right. ADNOC.
I guess they have a perfect right to sell the company. They own the company. The shareholders will have a meeting and they'll come to a decision, I suppose. But in this day and age of an energy crisis, should we be divesting ourselves and losing this wonderful asset? Ownership of this asset?
Well, I know the managing director of Santos. He's going to make a lot of money out of this, and obviously it's a wonderful thing. Good luck to him. But I have some reservations about selling off some of our prime assets, which are vital for this country, and energy is one of those. Steel is another one. Fertiliser is another one. Plastics is another one. These are the four commodities that the Western world lives from. I have disquiet about selling a major energy producer to a foreign government. Now, we are already exposed by having foreign governments involved in our wind generation systems and our solar panels, to have some oil and gas owned by a foreign entity, I think it's a bit of a worry.
So in the national interest, we have a tribunal that looks at these kind of things. Can't they just put their foot down and say, sorry?
Well, yes, FIRB can do something on that. The government then can overrule
Foreign Investment Review Board or whatever it is.
They didn't when it came to the long-term lease on the Port of Darwin.
No.
That came from the Northern Territory government for rubber stamped it. Now, that is definitely not in our interest. It's definitely not in the interests of the US, who might look upon us more kindly if we hadn't have sold that lease.
Yeah.
So we have done some rather stupid things in this country. Now, I don't have a problem if our energy in this country is not at the international price, as long as we control it.
Yeah.
And we are making some disastrous decisions with energy. For example, in the Victorian Constitution, which both the Liberals and Labor agreed on, is that it is now against the Constitution to frack.
Yeah.
In Victoria, there is a lot of gas and oil still preserved in the rocks, and you can extract it by fracking, especially in the Gippsland Basin. There is a naturally fracked area of the Gippsland Basin, the Wombat Field, which will be drilled earlier in the year. They've only just got approval to do a horizontal well. But Victoria is sending itself backwards by not exploiting its own energy. Now, that affects us in South Australia because when the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine, we get brown coal energy coming through the interconnectors from Victoria. So if the lights go out in Victoria, they will flicker or go out here also.
Yes.
And so I think the system we originally had, where each state had its own energy, and that was exploited by people like Sir Thomas Playford, where energy was controlled by the state. As a result, we had a car industry, a white goods industry and other manufacturing.
And cheap electricity.
And that was the only way you could attract industry to Australia.
Why don't we just do things that work, particularly when we've had the experience of knowing what does work and what doesn't work?
This goes back to another hobby horse of mine. We've had 50 years of dumbing down of our education system.
Yes.
Now, at school, I learnt how steel was made. I still understand the process. I still know what is required to make steel and the quality of materials to make steel. But no, we now have people who are ideologues and telling us we can make steel using hydrogen. There are some fundamental errors in that view. And if they'd learnt how steel was made at school, they wouldn't be sprouting such nonsense. So we had a 50-year decline in our education system. A survey that came out a couple of days ago showed that we slipped in the university rankings, the best university in the country, my former university where I was professor and head for 13 years, the University of Melbourne, slipped from 13 to 19. Now, we have been slipping in school education. We were a couple of years behind kids in Singapore. Our university education has slipped. We probably have far too many universities. And I'll give an example. We have 150 students in Australia studying mining engineering. It is mining that keeps this country afloat. We have 7,000 students studying law, and it's law that stops mining.
And they can't see it, or they invented it and rather cherish it. But listen, I have a young lady who's going to be here any second. Isabella Taylor is her name. An old soul. Remarkable young lady on her way to school. She's just started high school and she's got a television program, and from time to time she sends me things. And she sent me something the other day about how disgusted she was that kids at school are being terrified by all this climate crisis nonsense. And I said, you come in, sit around the dining room table with me. And she's been here before, but come in and talk to us about that, and you'll meet Professor Plimer. And he is hot on the way kids are being educated. And she said, she's only a kid. I am too. She's quite serious about being a product of something that she doesn't think works.
I have time constraints. I've got a Sky television program to pre-record for tonight's The World According to Rowan Dan. I've got a flight to Singapore to catch, which I really shouldn't miss.
Maybe just a couple of seconds there.
Yes. So, and then my wife has sort of lost her sight, so I need to take her hunting and gathering before I go away.
Dear, oh dear.
And I've got to finish a Spectator article that I've just about finished.
Yeah. You have an incredible output.
I'm very focused and very organised.
Yeah.
And I think well ahead. I've got 7 hours up to Singapore from Adelaide. I'm overnight in Singapore, and then I'm flying on a private plane from Singapore to Thailand, and then Thailand to the Seychelles, and then the Seychelles to Istanbul, and then Istanbul to Nice, and then Nice to Farnborough, where the plane goes in for its 100-hourly service. I get off and I then come home via Montreal to see my son and his wife and my 3 grandkids in Montreal, and then come back through Dallas, Fort Worth, and there's a direct flight from there to Melbourne and then on to Adelaide, and that's all in 9 days.
Do you ever lose your luggage?
I carry only hand luggage.
That's only sensible. Now, I don't know what they pay you, but you are worth a lot more. Did you know that Albo got a pay rise?
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes.
He is now on $622,000 a year. The President of the United States of America, with 340.1 million people, we have 27. The President of the United States earns $400,000 a year. Albo, $622,000.
His super over his lifetime is worth $40 million.
Isn't that amazing?
And so we are paying all of that. Now, I don't have a problem with paying people very good money, but they have to be very good themselves. And I would argue that there are not too many people in federal politics that are worth paying the sort of money they get paid.
No,
they certainly couldn't compete in industry. In state politics, they're a tier below in terms of their performance and intellect, and they get paid pretty well. But that's all tied in to the rort. And the rort is that the politicians decide the salaries of senior public servants. And then the senior public servants decide the salaries of the politicians.
It's cosy.
And it's a wink and nudge all the way along the line.
What could possibly go wrong? John, I'll see you later.
Okay,
you look after yourself. You're not going to be around for a couple of weeks, are you?
8 days. 8 days. So I'm like with Ian, I'm heading off on via Singapore and off to The Hague. So
all right, we'll be in touch.
yes, no problems at all.
See you when you get back.
Thank you.
See you when you get back.
Flight?
Send Isabella in. Send Isabella in to meet the professor. Yeah. Anyway, I sort of despair.
Well, you can't.
Well, I don't despair when I meet a young lady like Isabella, and I think, there's hope here.
There's a lot of hope, yes.
We have to educate them, though, and as she is about to tell us, Isabella! Hello. Hello. Have you met Professor Plimer? Readjust the chairs.
Hi, Jeremy. How are you?
How are you, Sarah? Nice to see you. I was telling the professor about you. Are you on your way to school?
I will be eventually. We're getting there. It's been a busy couple of weeks, especially with the end of term. Got a few public speaking competitions coming up and things like that. How are you?
Oh, everything is fine. Everything is fine around the dining room table. I was telling the professor about that story about at school you feel that you're being, not influenced, not terrorised, misinformed, yes, bullied.
I think for me personally, when I was in primary school, the climate change kind of thing wasn't as brought up in the news as much. But now for kids currently at this kind of time in the national curriculum, there's a lesson aimed at 9-year-olds teaching them that climate change is killing the earth and that it's driving people into poverty, and it's not true. So,
what do you think of that, Professor, that style of education? Brainwashing?
It reminds me of the communist Soviet Union, where they had Lysenko dismiss all of genetics and develop his vernalisation scheme for growing crops. And what this meant was we had crop failure year after year after year, and 30 million people died, most of them Ukrainians. And so if you get the science wrong and follow it, it's going to cost you. Now, we should know from history that we're in a warm period of time. 300 years ago, we came out of the Little Ice Age. What's going to happen after you come out of a Little Ice Age? You're going to warm up. And we had a Little Ice Age, and then before that we had the medieval warming, Before that, we had the Dark Ages when it was cold. Before that, we had Roman and Greek warming. Before that, we had the Egyptian cooling. Before that, we had the Minoan warming. How long do you want me to go back? So we have these cycles of warm and cold.
You see, Isabella, there's nothing to worry about.
And we are in one of these warming cycles.
Yeah.
The real question to ask is, what do humans contribute to the current warming cycle?
Yeah. And the answer?
The answer is I'm waiting for the evidence. I'm patient. I've been waiting for 30 years.
And the evidence you're looking for is that CO2 is a problem.
Well, no one has ever shown in the scientific literature that carbon dioxide drives global warming. It's never been shown.
Then why do so many people preach that?
And because you can't see it, you can't smell it, you can't taste it. And
so why do we believe it?
People forget. Well, belief is a word of religion and politics, not of science. And people forget about photosynthesis, where carbon dioxide is plant food. And they don't know my field of science, and that is geology. And in the Flinders Ranges here, we have places where you can see that there was an ice age. There was ice at the equator, at sea level, only about 5 kilometres thick. And that was at a period of time when we had 20% carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So if we had so much carbon dioxide compared with 0.04% now, we should have had runaway warming.
So how can people argue with that logic? Evidence.
Well, as soon as I use those sort of arguments, I get attacked, but not on my science. I get attacked as a person. Yeah. So what we're dealing with is a political movement which has been 50 years in the making. It's tied in with the dumbing down of the education system. Yeah. It's tied in with the fact that the schools now are places where you mould souls for our future woke left world. Yeah. And if you happen to learn critical thinking at school or learn a bit of history, you have escaped. Yeah. But
Professor,
you're in bad shape.
Just as an aside, my profession was training teachers, and towards the end of the 80s, I received a letter in my pigeonhole to say that my position was to be, and I quote, disestablished. That was in line with our state government closing down all of the teacher training facilities. Teacher training formerly was a 4-year degree. Now it's half an hour, I think, and they'll give you a dip ed somewhere if you've completed some other degree that's useless.
Underwater knitting, perhaps.
Oh, have you got that one?
Hello, who's on the line?
It's John on the line, Jeremy.
Hello, John.
Good morning.
We're talking about climate crap.
Climate crap. I want to add something
Jeremy has a way with words.
To the conversation. It's about the Premier.
About the Premier?
Yes. The Premier has come out and, made a statement how he's going to spend $45 million on doing up the South North Adelaide golf links, which I think is astronomical, and that's for this live golf or what have you. And he said it'll become a public course. But, that's a lot of money they're spending on doing up a golf course. And there's a couple of other things I want to point out. He wants to spend $18 million on a tower on the Festival Plaza, 38 stories high. Mm-hmm. Now, what's wrong with the history? Don't they realise what happened to the towers in America? And nowadays, they don't need aeroplanes. They've got drones. They can strike a building with a drone and do the same damage.
But apart from all of that, the thing that they're planning is ugly as well as expensive.
Well, it's not. It is ugly. It is an ugly idea, Jeremy. And here's another thing. I happen to have a parking permit for disability. Yeah. In the past, it's been free. It is no longer free. $25 for 5 years.
Yeah. Well, there's a simple solution to this. The state is in debt. That debt will be left to Isabella to pay. Why not keep the money in the pocket and not spend it at all?
Yes, I totally agree. Live within their means.
And also spend on things that help, not building golf courses for a select amount of people that might use them. There's so many other things like they could use that money to repay the debt they've already
But
caused.
Isabella, they have this thing called cake and circuses in politics.
Yes, and there's a lot of overspending, especially with the current government.
Yeah, well,
I question the economics of running a state on goods and services.
Yeah, it's interesting. You've got to think about there's a lot of like things that they don't really need to spend, like the amount of people they employ and how much work they actually do. You think about like the amount of government workers they have, and the work that they're actually all doing is probably the job of about what a third people could do if they were working just a bit harder, and probably how normal people used to work.
And what about AI? The professor was telling us about AI and the role that AI plays in mining. I mean, all of these people could be made redundant, couldn't they?
Well, I offended a lawyer the other day, telling him that telling him that his job won't be there for long because he's going to be replaced by AI. And this could easily happen with the bureaucracy. And what concerns me is that all of us except one around the table will be dead then, but people will have to pay back the debt.
Yes.
And
That's exact.
we cannot be borrowing money
Yes.
to pay back debt. You borrow money for major infrastructure,
Shouldn't
like,
we-
say, the Sydney Harbour Bridge, and you pay it back.
Yes,
but you don't borrow to pay back your previous borrowings.
But shouldn't we simply, like a household, you can't just spend money you don't have.
No,
Government
it's called budgeting.
governments should have the same approach to it. Live within the budget.